A very warm welcome to all our viewers. The world has woken up to a day when India has hit back and hit hard as far as Pakistan is concerned. 9 targets in Pakistan, that includes Pakistan's Punjab, also Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, have been hit by India's armed forces. It's a measured, focused, and non-escalatory response from India, as India has already shared. But to shed more light on the significance of these targets, I'm joined in by Aman Sharma of CNN News 18, also senior fellow from ORF. Sushant Sareen joins me live. Sushant, before I come to you, I want to bring in Aman. Aman, if you could shed more light on all of these targets, these locations, and roughly a timeline when the attacks began from India's side.
See, Akanksha, the attacks have began just after midnight, early today morning. I would start off by saying, and then we'll bring in Sushantji inside the conversation also. I would like to say that this strike is perhaps the biggest surgical strike by India ever. It is much bigger than Uri. It is much bigger than Balakot. In Uri, we did a ground strike on 2 to 3 terror launch pads. In Balakot, we had struck a terrorist, post in Pakistan, mainland Pakistan,
Right.
and there was a big strike on that. This time, we have struck 9 targets, but out of these 9 targets, these are the headquarters of terror in Pakistan. The Jaish-e-Mohammed headquarter in Bhavalpur, the LET headquarter in Muridke, very near Lahore. So we have hit I would say, the big daddies of terror here. We have hit the headquarters. We have rained missiles there. It's the biggest strike by India. And, it has taken 14 days. Some people were getting a bit impatient that when it's going to happen. Uri happened after 11 days. Pulwama happened after 12 days. But this time, after 2 weeks, I think Mr. Modi has lived up to his words, which he had said, कि आतंकियों की बची कुची जमीन को भी मिट्टी में मिला देने का समय आ गया है. So in a way, उन्होंने आखिरी जमीन जो टेरर मास्टरमाइंड्स की हेडक्वार्टर्स थे उनको मिट्टी में मिला दिया.
We all were talking about how he was alluding to Pakistan-occupied Kashmir as well, and that is what he has done this time around as well. Sushant, Lashkar, Hizbul, Jaish, all of their terror camps. I think important to highlight how Pakistan has already started tom-tomming how these are civilian targets. Their mosques have been destroyed. I want you to shed light on how Pakistan's army and ISI have been operating covertly through these very military installations, their cantonment areas, and also these mosques, which are the training hubs for these terrorist organizations.
Yeah, so I think this entire propaganda campaign from the Pakistani side that, India has hit mosques, these are not mosques. Mari, if these are mosques, then I don't know what terror camps are. These were places which, behind this was the mosque behind which, and inside which most of these terror groups used to operate. So yes, they had this compound in which they also had a mosque, but the mosque was only one part of it. It was the rest of the camp which is important. And a mosque in which terrorists go is hardly a place of worship, I would imagine. But I think this is the propaganda thing which the Pakistanis will try and do to show that, Islam is being targeted or Muslims are being targeted. And I think we need to shoot this down with all the contempt that this propaganda deserves. And we need to highlight that places like this place in Bahawalpur, Jaish-e-Mohammed's main base or the Muridke base, this is not hidden from anybody. These have been in the public eye for decades now, that these were the big bases or the headquarters of these groups. In Kotli and other places as well, where the Hizb and some of these other groups have their bases.
It was in Kotli that they trained Ajmal Kasab. The funding was coming from Osama bin Laden for the very mosques in Kotli.
Exactly. So these targets have been very carefully selected, and that care has been taken to ensure that we are only hitting at terrorists. We are neither hitting at civilians, and terrorists are not civilians. Just because they don't wear a uniform does not make them a civilian. They are terrorists, and they are legitimate targets.
Right.
So we haven't targeted civilians. We haven't targeted the Pakistani military or the Pakistani government offices as yet. It will entirely depend on what the Pakistani pushback is. And on the basis of that, India will also have to decide whether we are going to hit these guys. So, but having said that, I think it is important to understand that we might say whatever we want to say, that this is non-provocative, that we've only targeted terrorists. But I think we have literally thrown the gauntlet at the Pakistanis. We've gone in, hit them in places where it was assumed that India would not do such an act. So I think we've really upscaled our response, and the significance of that cannot be underplayed. And no matter what spin we give, the Pakistanis will find that they will have to respond in one form or another. Now, there are two possibilities. One is that we've had this initial skirmish. The Pakistanis can say that, yeah, the Indians came, they attacked these so-called civilian target mosques and all, but we hit back. There are a couple of planes which are reported to have crashed in India, and that can be a possible off-ramp. But apparently, from whatever we are hearing from the Pakistani sources, that is not going to be their off-ramp. They will go up the escalation ladder. At which point of time, we will have to decide what they are hitting. If they hit any civilian target or any military target or cause any significant damage, then I suppose it's a no-brainer that the Indian government will have to go up the escalation ladder. So we are in that spiral right now.
Right.
And we'll have to wait and see.
The information campaign has already started. I just was going through the responses that have started coming in from Pakistan. Ataullah Tarar, their information minister, has already, he's already said that they are going to respond, and that Pakistan will avenge for what they are saying, targeting of their civilians. So one needs to also keep in mind that there's going to be an escalation, as Sushant was rightly highlighting, that what is going to be India's off-ramp now, because Operation Sindoor, as the name is already an indication of the fact that this was meant to avenge the killings of all of those 26 innocent tourists, 25 of them being Indians.
See, Akanksha, I would say one thing, that what India has done through Operation Sindoor is also something that the world was backing India to do. If you see the US statement, if you see Russia's statement, everybody was saying India has a right to defend itself. India has a right to go after the terrorists and the terrorist infrastructure. Nobody really wanted a global, regional conflict or a war to break out between India and China. So I would like to read out what is the Indian statement so far. I think it's a very carefully worded and very, properly documented statement, where we are saying that a little while ago, Operation Sindoor, we have hit terrorist infrastructure in Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, and from where terrorist attacks against India have been planned and directed. So India is saying that the terrorist spots that we have hit, from here, various terrorist attacks in India, including the Pahalgam attack, have been planned and directed. So that is the first thing that I think India is saying very, very smartly. Then India is saying our actions have been focused, measured, and non-escalatory in nature. So India is saying, okay, we have done what we have done. Now we are not interested in escalating it. We have gone and hit your terror infrastructure, your headquarters of your terror. Pakistan did not do anything against them all these years. We kept telling you, please act against them. You have not acted. These are, Sushantji can also weigh in that, these are all proscribed organizations. Jaish-e-Mohammed, Lashkar-e-Toiba, these are proscribed organizations globally. Why hasn't Pakistan acted against these headquarters which are in their territory? So India is a very fair ground there. Also, India saying that, we have demonstrated considerable restraint in selection of targets and method of execution. So these are surgical strikes on the terror basis, not on Pakistan civilians, not on Pakistani military assets. That is what India is very, very clearly saying. And of course, Pakistan wants an escalation. Obviously, there's pressure now on Pakistan in front of the civilian. We have voices coming from civilian population in Pakistan saying,
"What was our Pakistan?" Bring in Sushant on that note. Sushant, it's an open secret that Pakistani military has been offering its logistical, military training support to all of these terror organizations, which, don't forget, by the way, have also been rebranding themselves as the TRF, as the PAFF, the Kashmir Tigers. All of them have been rebranded to escape global scrutiny. Keep that in mind as well. So, when India was closely calibrating its response, there was a conscious effort to keep these particular targets in mind.
Yeah, because look, you're very correct that it was this new fronts that were created to give them the appearance of being an indigenous Kashmiri kind of groups. You know, the TRFs, the
That
PAFF,
would be
and
the state front instead of a terrorist front.
exactly. And look at the kind of names they continue to spout radical Islamist stuff. But the name as such, the brand name as such, is a very secular resistance force, and that kind of a name. But nobody is fooled by that. I don't think anybody is fooled that what the antecedents or what the linkages of these groups are. And so, what we are hitting at is the mother organizations of all these groups. And the fact is that as Aman very correctly says, that these are not groups that have emerged overnight. These have been there for the last 20, 25 years. These are people who are proscribed by the United Nations. The Hizbul Mujahideen is proscribed by the US, has designated it as a terror organization, including its chief, Sayyid Salahuddin. So all of these guys are notorious fellows, right? So let's not make any mistake about it. And I think the clincher came that there is this footage which is doing the rounds on social media of top Pakistan army officers going to the hospital in Bahawalpur to find out about the well-being of the Jaish cadres who have been hit. And out there, the kind of sloganeering that is happening, that is the typical Jaish sloganeering. Now, the question which India can legitimately ask Pakistan and the rest of the world is that if these groups under the FATF, under various other provisions of international law, these groups had to be proscribed. They had to be strangulated. Their funds had to be shut down. Their establishments had to be shut down. How come these groups are still flourishing in Pakistan? How come the Pakistani state has not acted against these groups? Isn't that the responsibility of the Pakistani state to act against these kind of terror groups which are destabilizing the entire region? So that will clearly be a diplomatic, positioning. But that does not mean that the Pakistanis will be ashamed of what they have been doing, that they will have any kind of contrition about being hand in glove with these terrorists. They will brazen it out. And that is what we need to be prepared for.
Absolutely. And I think, Akanksha, one also fascinating story in this entire strike is the backstory of this strike. The inside story of how India has done it. So, we were all hearing that Pakistani, defenses are at an all-time high. They have mobilized everything. They're calling for that India is going to attack in 24 hours to 36 hours. And when ultimately the strike comes, Pakistan is caught napping. And I think that's the beauty of Mr. Modi's, I will say, stilt, and as well as the surprise factor. You see what happened 2 days back. This news was given to all media outlets in India, Shushanji, that there'll be a mock drill today. So, all TV channels yesterday from morning till night were running a mock drill. And, it seemed Pakistan also got taken in by that there's going to be a mock drill today. So strike to baad mein hoga. Strike to mock drill ke baad hoga. Abdul Basit, I saw his tweet.
It was not only about the mock drill. A lot of people are saying IPL khatam hoga, then it'll be after the IPL. Okay, it will be after the victory day parade.
Abdul Basit, in fact, went on to say that Rajnath Singh has to travel to Moscow for the victory day parade.
Exactly.
So it's going to happen around that time.
I think Mr. Modi has managed to blindside everybody here, completely. And, the secrecy is amazing, even in this strike.
But as I'm going through the profiles,
which we have seen in the past as well, haven't we? Whether it was the surgical strikes, whether it was the Balakot thing, we knew something is going to be coming, right? But what it was, I think it's always been a very closely guarded secret. They managed to keep everything under the wraps, and then they just come out with it. And I think that is the way government should be operating. So no quibbles on that count. But the only thing is that now, in fact, now what has happened right now is past us. I am looking at what will happen.
Take a moment to weigh in on the mind behind this entire selection of these targets and the intel that's gone behind this is the NSA. So take a moment to also weigh in on the NSA, Mr. Doval's planning.
No, I think the NSA would, of course, have played a very critical role. That's a no-brainer. The
Of course,
fact
it's
that
a
he
joint operation between the Indian Air Force and the Indian Army. So, of course, kudos to them as well. Our entire
no, of
armed
course. So look, one, as far as the NSA is concerned, he's a man who's dealt with terrorism
forces.
for almost all his career, right? He is one guy who knows these groups. He knows how these groups operate, how these groups function, where they are located, and then of course there would be the other intelligence agencies which would have also come into play, and then certainly the armed forces, who would be the the tip of the spear to whatever was going to be carried out. And the fact that this entire thing was coordinated well between the various forces is something that we need to laud. But again, there are certain gaps which we can see
Yes.
over the last 12 hours or so, which I think, but this is not the time to talk about them. But once the dust settles over this particular episode, I think those are questions that we need to start raising, and start filling in those gaps as well, which we have seen emerge over the last 12 to 14 hours.
You know, you made a very critical point earlier during the day. I was watching you on the broadcast, and you shared your skepticism about the role that IMF is going to play, or then the assessment of their additional funding that's coming from IMF, and the assessment that's about to happen on 9th of May. I think where I do agree with you is when I was going through a piece by ORF itself, it's gone down to tracing the first funding that's come from IMF, and that goes all the way down to 1958. And there seems to be a minimum window of every 2 to 3 years. They've been borrowing tranches after tranches, and the attacks have been taking place consistently. But what have these global institutions done, particularly the IMF?
So, Akanksha, you have to also see Pakistan is in its 24th program, right? Okay, so since, yeah, from around the early 50s, they went into the first program. So, you do the math yourself that virtually every 2, 3 years they go back to the IMF. So, they've been perpetually in an IMF program in one way or another. But please also remember that there was a time when Pakistan was a very favored ally of the Western countries,
Yes.
which hold the power in the IMF. And that was also the time when Pakistan could get away with murder and used to get away with murder. Uh, Things have changed over the last 15, 20 years. Even then, it was only, I think, in the last or the program before that, when this whole FATF thing started with Pakistan, that the IMF latched onto the FATF and made that part of the conditionalities that Pakistan had to observe for the loan package to go through. So they used that as a pressure point.
I'm sure you will agree that FATF has been the only body which has been able to have some sort of control over Pakistan, because till the time they were on the grey list, they had wielded some influence.
But Akanksha, FATF in conjunction with the IMF, right?
Okay.
Both
Yes.
working in tandem.
Yes.
And now the question is that when Pakistan goes to the IMF board in 2 days from now, what is the posture going to be of the IMF board? India can oppose, but India cannot stop on its own until and unless we lobby for support, especially from the Americans. Maybe not scrapping the program, but making sure that Pakistan is delivered a message that, look, if you don't step off the brink right now, then this program is going to be in jeopardy and this package does not go through. I'm not sure if we have reached that point. And
Okay.
that I am not ready to say as of now whether that loan is going to be coming through or not. If that loan doesn't come through and is held out as a kind of a leverage over the Pakistanis, then it's an off ramp which the Pakistanis can take. If that loan is given, then there is no incentive for the Pakistanis just yet to take any kind of, an exit route from what is likely to unfold over the
I'm
next.
glad that you talked about the American role, because that's what I'm going to, in fact, bring in Aman on, and I'd like your view also on it. Aman, take a moment to just weigh in on Donald Trump's reaction. It's a shame We just heard about it as we were walking in the doors of the Oval, just heard about it. I guess people knew something was going to happen based on a little bit of past. They've been fighting for a long time. They've been fighting for many, many decades and centuries. Actually, if you think about it, I hope it ends very quickly. Now, Dawn, which is a Pakistani publication, has picked on this first line. It's a shame. And they have been tom-tomming about it, how India has been bashed by the US president by referring to the operation
Well,
as a shame.
this statement is quintessential Trump. You can't make any heads and tails about it. First, he's saying it's a shame. Then he says we didn't know about it. Then he's saying that I hope it ends quickly. See, that is the US line. I think even if you see the playbook before this attack, US has been following the same playbook as after Uri or after Pulwama. That look, we are with you. You have a right to defend yourself. You've been attacked by terrorists, but don't make it a war. Okay, do a limited strike. Do something that satisfies you, but don't make it into a war, because no one wants a war. See, this time, Akanksha, also the geopolitical situation, the geo-economic situation, if you look at it, China is in a bad shape after the US tariffs. The global supply chains are all getting disrupted, maybe in the favor of India, which may seal a trade deal with the US in the next few weeks, if not the next few months. India is in a booming economy. Of course, India also doesn't want a war, because that will disrupt everything that we have. Our share market
No,
is
no,
doing
no,
well.
no, no. But let me intervene there, because I think while India doesn't want a war, it is the Pakistani army general who wants a war.
Yeah, they
And
have
I'm
been
talking
saying
about
Pakistan has
us.
been baiting India to do a war, because
This is exactly the bait they wanted India to fall for, but it was important for India to respond. So it is a bit of a catch-22 situation. So Shant, if I could bring you in, and as you respond to this kind of a catch-22 situation for India, also weigh in on the kind of international reactions that have been coming in. I am a little confused by the Americans and the Russians. The Russians, of course, have been more neutral than the Americans. But yes, go ahead.
So, Akanksha, this is something that India as a nation has to now confront. That yes, our economy is extremely critical, and yes, we need to continue to grow, and yes, we are onto a good thing. Yes, we are able to attract a lot of investment, a lot of new capital is coming in, and India is finally, trying to reach to its potential. But does that mean that you allow a terror sponsoring country like Pakistan to continue to sponsor terror in India simply because the generals out there want to survive in power? Now, there can be a body of opinion which says, look, what the hell is just 26 people, big bloody deal. 26 people can die in a bus crash tomorrow. So, what's the big deal? But I think that would be a misreading of the situation, because attacks like this are different from road accidents. These are challenges which are posed to your national security and your national sovereignty. So you have to respond to them. For the longest, we haven't. But I think you have to respond to them. So I don't think we have much of a choice. And if you don't do it now, then at what point of time will you start doing it?
Yes.
And don't you give a free hand to the enemy country to continue doing this kind of a thing every time they're in a mood to shed some Hindu blood? Just go into India and just butcher a few people, and that's it. You become a Ghazi and a Mujahid, right? I don't think we can stand for it. So that is very clear as far as I'm concerned. I also agree with both of you that I don't think India wants a full-fledged war, but India has to impose some kind of deterrence, has to do something to tell the Pakistanis that there is a certain unacceptable behavior on your part, which we are not going to take anymore. We have for many years, but no longer. So I think we had to do something. Now, what is the international reaction? I think I haven't seen the Russian one. I've seen what Trump said. Look,
We spoke about it on Saturday, Sushant.
No, that was I'm talking about what has happened in the last 12 hours, right?
We are expecting
in
the
the
reaction.
past, I don't care. I'm talking about now what has happened since this day started. And I've seen the American one. And Trump, of course, uses a lot of, hyperbole. It's a shame. But what he said ultimately was that, okay, fine, guys, I know you guys are having a bit of a, punch up. Finish this off fast and then move on. I think that was the basic message he's giving. I think Aman has also translated it similarly, perhaps in different words. I'm very in fact, uh, interested in the kind of Chinese reaction which has come. I'm intrigued, in fact, because I would have imagined that the Chinese reaction would have been kind of ballistic, but it's very measured. They've said that we regret what has happened and we want things to come back to normal, which isn't exactly going after India, and which isn't exactly going in favor of the Pakistanis. Now,
And it's in contrast to Turkey's reaction, because the
exactly.
Turkish minister said that we stand in solidarity with Pakistan.
But I don't know, the inscrutable Chinese, are they being deceptive or are they
Yes.
being honest about it? Now, if they're being honest about it, that means that the Chinese are probably positioning for some kind of a role in this region where they can behave, because the Americans are washing their hands off, they can behave like the big daddies and, try and do things in this region. Uh, I don't know. Like I said, it's too early to speculate
All
beyond
right.
just that statement.
Aman, what are
Uh,
the chances that you think this
reaction
will
was
end in
very
a stalemate? I want to ask Aman if there are any chances this would end in a stalemate, because many critics of the Prime Minister are saying that it was always Prime Minister Modi who said it is not an era of war, and today's response will perhaps lead to exactly what he's preached other countries like Ukraine and Russia.
So he never said that this is not an era of war on terror. So I think that is the fine distinction here which I'll make on Modi. And I'm getting this to see very interesting statement by the Pakistan's defense minister as we speak. And Mr. Khwaja is saying that his military is ready to refrain from further action if India halts its operations.
Wow.
So it's a very, very quite a telling statement from Pakistan that, okay, we are fine, just stop now. Whatever is done is done. You've got your revenge. Let's not hurt us more.
But do you also sense a foreign intervention here? Would you like to share any thoughts about Marco Rubio's
Akanksha, dekho, let me be very blunt and honest. Number one, I don't take Khwaja Asif very seriously, right? The guy, his status in, even as defense minister, is virtually not even that of a chaprasi. Okay, so I don't think he's the guy calling the shots unless he has been told.
I love Khwaja Asif. He's the one who's axed Pakistan's creed, especially when it comes to the Western opinion. So I love Khwaja Asif.
No, of course, because he's a loudmouth and he exposes Pakistan, so that's okay. But if the comment which or the remark which Aman is quoting right now is there, has he been put up to it? I don't know. But look, like I said, I think I said this initially. I don't know whether I said it on CNN News 18 or I said it to you guys earlier, where I said that we've had a bit of a kind of a bash up in the last 12 hours. The Pakistanis can just as well claim victory. We have done what we had to do. The Pakistanis can also claim victory and say that, look, 3 of Indian planes have fallen. Whether 3 have fallen, 2 have fallen, I don't know. I have no idea. And there are conflicting reports still coming in. But let us assume 3 have fallen. So the Pakis can say that, look, you guys came to hit us. We've hit you back. And this becomes the off-ramp. They've declared victory. That last time we had brought down 2 planes, which they had not brought down 2. Only 1 had fallen. But they claimed 2. And this time we've done 3. Right? So we've done 1 better. They can do that. They can just as well say, no, this is not good enough for us. We want to go up.
I'll have to wrap up now because, Sushant, it's 10:30 and we are all now expecting that very significant press conference to be taking place by the army. Let's hope that we have good news coming our way. Well, it's already out. Many thanks to you, Sushant, for joining in, eking out your precious time. It's always a pleasure. And here's hoping that, Operation Sindoor actually delivers the kind of justice those widows deserve.
Absolutely. Let's see what the army has to say. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, guys.